This video is for business leaders who want to radically improve their odds of successful product launch online. This is actually, in essence, a book review of a book called Launch, Updated and Expanded by Jeff Walker. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on a new persuasive technique that didn't exist, or rather the author wasn't aware of by the time he published the book, because the book it came out in was only published about 3 months previous to his own. That's when it was launched, so he didn't have it. And also my recommended video about something that is called unity and chorality. It's essentially an extension of some things I will be talking about throughout the video, but goes into more depth. It's one of the strategies, one of the principles, levers of influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. So I'm currently myself in the pre-launch phase of my first introductory course. So the timing of this book is perfect for me. I first learned about this book from an excellent book, another excellent book actually, on copywriting, which was called How to Write Copy That Sells by Ray Edwards. He referred to the book I'm reviewing today in his book, and given that the quality of his book was so good, I took his word for it. And this is an example of how, as you demonstrate competence, skill, and value, people will start to trust things like your recommendations of other products and books. So, as I said, that book I would also highly recommend. And essentially the next part is what got my immediate attention about the book, today's book review, the book Launch, Updated and Expanded, was the fact that Jeff talked about Dr. Robert Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion and why influencing positively and ethically are the best long-term strategies. Now, there's a lot of both research and personal experience that supports this, including that from Adam Grant in his book Give and Take, and many others, including Robert Cialdini's influence, also Updated and Expanded, or whatever it was, as I said, which came out a few months before this book that I'm reviewing today. Another thing that I really liked about this book was that he told his origin story of his, what he calls his product launch formula, which is or PLF, which is sort of the central focus of this book. It's probably, in a way, it's part of his own pre-launch content, but it's also a very excellent book on how he's been able to successfully launch many products using his approach, which is unique. It's not clear to me specifically what is unique, other than specifically the fact that he references and then cites throughout his book examples of using the 6 principles or levers of influence, of which now there is 7. So he couldn't integrate that one because he wasn't aware of it when his book was released, or at least he didn't reference it in said book. So what made it, what he did really well is he clearly described how his own digital marketing strategies for small business worked and how well they worked, especially in contrast to the other people he references in the book, which were other leaders in the digital marketing space. This was initially many years ago, and how he just assumed others were doing something similar to him, only for him to find out that they were not, and what he was doing was working much better, which then, at that time, his launches or his product launch formula hadn't existed yet, but the recognition from the community, the digital marketing community, showed him that, well, this was in fact a very good product, and he came out with the product later based on the feedback he got from that community and the excellent results he got, and then taught to others, and they also got the same kind of results. So what made this book compelling, in a sense, more than anything, is how successful it was, not only for himself, but for his customers. And he specifically refers to their stories and includes case studies in a supplement. It's another thing that stands out. I would say only the best quality authors, the best quality books, those who really believe in the things that he does, including over-delivering on value, will include supplements and PDFs with their books. There are, I would say, the minority do that, and they usually have the best books, and he has that with this book as well. So he offers case studies either on his website, which he references, including those specific links, specific URLs, but also gives more information about a lot of the same stuff in his supplementary PDF, which I have yet to look at because I just finished the book itself today. So all of these people, this is the part that made it even more compelling, more believable, and more encouraging to me, is that essentially everybody, including himself, effectively started from zero or nearly so with respect to mailing list and resources. When the author started his product launch formula as a business, he already had a business newsletter that was around the stock market, but effectively that list was useless because it had nothing to do with his new product. So he wasn't able to use that, and he started basically from scratch, as did many of the customers that he specifically cites and goes into the details of their stories. This is interesting to me because a lot of people say, well, many people have succeeded from my product. He gives specific references, names, businesses, and so forth, which gives it not only more credibility, but the ability for you to verify what his claims are. This is something sorely lacking in a lot of people's work, because honestly, I'm not sure whether they want you to verify it. So he didn't actually spend much time, or really any time, saying what he did different than the others in his industry way back when he discovered how effective his formula was, his launch formula, compared to what others were doing. And to me, that's a bit of a shame, because for me, just going into a launch myself right now, it would have been really nice to know what those differences are. Sure, it's great to know exactly what I should be doing, but I would also love to know what I should not be doing. That is, where am I losing opportunity cost by maybe focusing on things that I'm doing that I could then trade that time for better time and focusing on that formula. So it's valuable. And unfortunately, he didn't include it in the book. And I think that would have been a really great value add to the book. So Jeff, I hope you see this. So I also think that that could help myself and others to stop doing those things that would do those things that might be a waste of time, so that myself and others could focus on higher leverage activities. That is, not lose that opportunity cost and focus on those other things. Might sound contradictory, but I believe it would have been a significant value add to the book to find out what he had actually done, at the very least, if not what they had done, but what he had done differently than them, so that we could better understand that contrast. So another thing I would have liked to see in this book was a list of the marketing strategies, in particular, that is the 6 levers of influence, the 6 principles of persuasion, each of Cialdini's 6 principles, in a list near the end of that book, sort of like, here's an example of this. He did it throughout the book, but it was hard to keep track. So if he'd said, okay, here's reciprocity, here's authority, and so on. Some of these names have changed in the updated vernacular, if you want to call it that, as Cialdini changed some of those phrases for his levers of influence. The same things, but some have been merged and one has been added. However, it would have been super helpful to, after hearing references throughout the book, to then hear specifics and a list breakdown, so you could see with each part of the product launch formula where he used them and how he used them all in one place. So a summary of those reference to those levers of influence. So to be fair, I'm confident that he covered each one of these points in the book, but it was really sort of hard to keep track of them. You know, as you're listening to a book, over 4 or 6 hours or how many ever hours. It was quite a short book, but it was very content rich. That it's really hard to keep track and see whether you've ticked all the boxes for all 6 of those levers, which I, as somebody who's a longtime student of Cialdini's work, would have loved to have seen. Would have sort of brought everything together in a stronger way, at least for myself. So he ended on what some people might think is a seemingly soft note, and that was effectively to follow your bliss. But I really love that. It basically showed Jeff was not only very, very intelligent, very knowledgeable and stuff, and educated with his topic, with really extensive practical experience since he's been doing this since the early days of the internet, but also that he is a wise man with respect to what really matters to people and what most people get into business to do, not to run a business for the purpose of business, but to make a difference in the world, have more time for themselves and all those other things. So he really emphasizes the fact that if you don't love your business, if you don't love your clients, and it isn't making the meaningful impact you hoped it would, if that was important to you, that you rethink and change that. Since he wrote this, I have learned probably in the last year that there is verification. I think it was Daniel Pink's work that talks about some real verification. Oh, sorry, no, I think it was Katie Milkman in her book, which was How to Change. That her book talks about verification of that whole idea of follow your bliss. It isn't just a quaint notion. It's something that they're now finding scientific verification of, which to me is really important because that's something I focus on in this channel. What is intuitive, what feels right, what seems right, and people believe isn't necessarily even real. It isn't even necessarily scientifically verifiable, but I love when it is, when that intuition aligns with the scientific verification. Those are the kind of things that I specifically focus on Crush It Club, because there's too many Fruit Loopery principles out there. Fruit Loopery is essentially people using scientific and technical words that they really don't understand or pretend to understand in order to make their ideas sound more scientific when they have no science behind them. I am fully against that and exposing it. So essentially what I really liked about this book for me is that he basically showed that he had the option of being a digital nomad when working when and where he wanted, with whom he chooses, and while making the difference and focusing on what matters most to him. He is essentially the type of person I'm striving to be, and this book brought me one step closer to that reality. So thank you for watching this far. We're now at the bonus content, and I'm a little sad that Jeff Walker wasn't able to listen to Cialdini's, Dr. Robert Cialdini's Influence, New and Expanded, which I referenced earlier, which was released just 3 months earlier than his own book. And I reviewed the book, not Cialdini's book, but Jeff Walker's book that I reviewed in this video. Cialdini's book I have reviewed in another video, in fact, multiple videos, because I go over every single lever of influence. So I would have loved to see how Jeff Walker would have applied Cialdini's 7th principle of persuasion, or lever of influence, which is called unity, that was added in that latest edition of his book. The first book, Influence, was done about 20 years ago. The new one is 10 times better. You can effectively throw away his old one, though it was good. It was a very good book. The new one is truly, significantly, majorly better, with 20 more years of insight and skill, both in his storytelling, his writing, and the way he put the book together was so much better. It goes so much deeper. It's a very long book. It was Cialdini's book. So essentially unity, which I just referenced, the 7th of the 7 levers of influence, is how we identify and bond with other members of our group. personal example would be, I just learned this today about a guy whose name is Vaclav Smil. I hope I'm saying that right. He's essentially the guy that Bill Gates goes to learn about sustainable energy and those kind of things, solar, the whole gamut, every type of energy out there. So he's a world authority on that. Apparently, he wrote 40 books. I just learned this today, but I was very proud. This is a perfect example of unity for no other reason than Vaclav Smith happens to be a Canadian like me. Is that rational? No, but I feel a bond simply because he's Canadian and he's the world authority on this topic of sustainability and energy. I feel proud as though I had something to do with that. Of course, I have nothing to do with it, but that's the power of unity. So it's interesting how powerful and how effective it can be. So basically, I feel personally connected with him for no other reason than we are both Canadian. So that's one example of unity. So to go into some depth about how you build unity, there are two main ways to do that. And you can use this in essentially anything in terms of relationships, including product launches, persuading positively, workplace cultures, things like that. So both of these two things can be used to influence people to buy your product, support your group and its members, as one example. The first is called, by Cialdini, is called a synchronous activity. That's any activity you do together at the same time. So for example, like the chant and dance or gestures you do when you are a fan of a sports team and your home team, everyone who's a fan of the home team knows the team chant or the team song and the dance that goes along with it. And everybody performs it together at the stadium during games. Now, remember, most of these people don't know each other, but when they do that activity together, they feel closer to one another. That's an example of synchronous activity that builds unity and makes people feel part of the same thing. So other examples of synchronous activities that would do this is dancing. Think of line dancing and how everybody does the same thing at the same time. Marching, that soldiers do, singing, reading a story together, or either one word at a time or one sentence at a time while everybody follows along. So sort of like a word relay. That's referenced in Cialdini's book, but it's also something I do with my students to get them to pay attention. Each student reads one word, so they have to follow along so when they know when it's their turn. It basically forces a certain amount of compliance and attention. Doesn't always work, but it works really well when it works, and it does build unity among the class or group members. The second type of activity is called a coordinated activity, and that's any time a group works together to accomplish a common goal. So think of a barn raising. Not that many people are doing that these days, but a team obstacle course where helping each other helps your whole team get across the course or through the course, usually against another team. Building a taller spaghetti marshmallow tower or a marshmallow top spaghetti tower against some other team you're competing with. If you don't know that reference, it's in a lot of business books. And the team that wins on the marshmallow tower, by the way, usually 5-year-olds. The MBAs and other academics usually get beat out by children. It's a very interesting phenomenon, and there's good reason behind it. So both types of unity can be built into your product launch, company culture, and any community where strengthening the bonds between group members is desirable. So that's it for the main content. My recommended video for today is, I forget the name of it. It's terrible. That's not the name of the video. The name of the video is Unity and Chorality. 7 levers, unity and chorality. And in case it isn't obvious, it is actually a deeper dive into the principle of unity that I just described to you. So that's it for Crush It Club 289 book review, launch, expanded and updated by Jeff Walker. I will also put in my right here and in the, oh, sorry, I can't put it there. I will put the recommended video here, but I will also put a link at the top of my description. That is the link to my weekly giveaway. In this case, it is the Persuade Positively primer, which is related again to those 7 levers of influence and how you can use them positively and ethically, because they can be used in other ways. And that's, in truth, really not good for anybody, including the person who decides to take a more negative or manipulative slant on them. That's it for Crush It Club 289 book review launch, updated and expanded by Jeff Walker. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.